No empire ever fell in a day. It crumbled slowly, brick by brick, boundary by boundary, the moment its rulers began to tolerate what they once conquered. And neither will your legacy disappear overnight. It will erode in the silence, in the compromise, in the permission you give your comfort to speak louder than your calling. So hear this: every standard you lower is a brick removed from the foundation of your greatness, and every compromise you tolerate is a pen handed to the wrong author. What you tolerate is writing your legacy. Question is, do you like the story so far? There's a quiet deal we make every day, not with the world, not with God, but with ourselves. It's the moment you look at something you hate, something that drains your energy, your time, your purpose, and you say, I'll let it slide. And in that moment, you write a line in the story of your life. Not in bold ink, not in fire, but in whispers, in compromise, in silent surrender. You want to know where your legacy begins. Not in your victories, not in your goals, not in the grand moments where the crowd cheers and the lights shine bright. Your legacy begins in what you tolerate in silence, the habits you allow to linger, the mediocrity you excuse, the boundaries you refuse to enforce, the standards you bend for comfort. Every single one of them is shaping your future in real time, because life doesn't just reward effort, it reflects permission. And the moment you start accepting less than you're capable of, the world listens, and it responds accordingly. Let me be clear, you are not defined by what you dream. You are defined by what you allow. You can dream of greatness. You can speak of success. You can write down affirmations and visualize your empire every morning. But if your actions whisper, I'll settle, then settling becomes your signature. What you tolerate is not passive. It's creative. It shapes your mindset, your energy, your direction. It tells the universe what you're available for and what you're willing to die without. If your standards are negotiable, your destiny will be too. Let that sink in, because history doesn't remember the ones who had potential. It remembers the ones who refused to shrink, who stood up when it was easier to stay quiet, who walked away when staying would have been convenient, who demanded more from themselves when no one else was watching. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb by tolerating failure. He used it. He turned failure into feedback, but he never tolerated inaction. He refused to tolerate the idea that something couldn't be done. Henry Ford didn't build an empire by fitting in. He saw a world moving slow and dared to speed it up. And when critics said it couldn't be done, he didn't argue. He built it anyway. Because his standard was this: if the world doesn't make room for my vision, I'll create one that does. Look around your life right now. What are you tolerating? The snooze button that kills your momentum before the day begins. The toxic conversation you walk away from but never address. The business idea you keep postponing. The body you say you'll take care of tomorrow. The people you let speak into your life who haven't earned that right. Every single time you say it's fine, your soul hears this is our new limit. And the tragedy isn't that we get used to pain. It's that we normalize it. You were not born to be average. You were not designed for delay. You were not made to tiptoe around your own power just because it makes other people uncomfortable. You were built to lead, to rise, to reflect the greatness of your Creator, not just in vision, but in discipline. But discipline isn't what you do when it's easy. It's what you demand from yourself when nobody else will. This is why your tolerances matter. Because every time you look away from the mess, you build a tolerance for chaos. Every time you laugh off a bad habit, you give it a longer lease on your future. Every time you justify why you're not taking action, you validate a lesser version of yourself. You think you're just letting it slide, but you're not. You're signing your name under a contract that says, I am okay living beneath what I was built for. And the moment you let that become a pattern, you hand over the pen that writes your legacy, to fear, to comfort, to the past. But here's the truth that sets fire to all that. You can take it back today, right now, not with noise, but with decisions. Because change doesn't begin in explosions. It begins in the quiet violence of decision. The kind of decision that says no more sleeping on my calling, no more entertaining what drains me, no more pretending this is okay, no more letting my potential die in the name of patience. You don't need permission to raise your standards. You don't need applause to enforce your boundaries. You don't need clarity to stop entertaining confusion. You need one thing, a decision, a line drawn in the soul, a fire that says I'm done watching my legacy be written by mediocrity, because the future is not waiting, it's watching what you allow, watching what you repeat, watching what you let slide and what you refuse to let live. So ask yourself this with brutal honesty: what am I currently tolerating that is training me to lose? Because that's the part no one talks about. What you tolerate doesn't just influence your legacy, it trains your identity. If you tolerate excuses, you become a man of excuse. If you tolerate small thinking, you become a prisoner of it. If you tolerate delay, you build an internal culture of procrastination. If you tolerate being around people with no hunger, you start calling apathy peace. But if you raise your standards ruthlessly and match them with unshakable action, you begin rewriting the architecture of your destiny. Your body listens. Your mind recalibrates. Your spirit stands tall again. You become magnetic to the future you were built for. Because high standards are not about perfection, they are about alignment. The moment your habits align with your vision, you become inevitable. You become inevitable. Not because the world suddenly believes in you, but because you finally stopped giving it the authority to define you. When you stop tolerating smallness, you stop explaining your greatness. When you stop tolerating chaos, you stop apologizing for your order. When you stop tolerating excuses, you stop asking permission to win. And that's the shift most never make. They try to rise while keeping one hand tied to what's pulling them down. They want the crown, but still tolerate the chains. You can't build a new future while defending the patterns of your past. And here's the raw truth. What you don't confront, you consent to. Silence is a signature. Avoidance is agreement. If you don't kill it, it teaches you to kneel. The question isn't, do you want more? Everyone wants more. The real question is, what are you willing to no longer accept? Because if you want transformation, if you want elevation, if you want to become undeniable, you will have to disappoint your comfort. You will have to betray your old self. You will have to disappoint some people. You will have to walk away from approval so you can walk toward alignment. Look at any man or woman who rewrote history and you'll find a trail of non-negotiables behind them. Abraham Lincoln didn't tolerate division, not in his soul, not in his country. And when the weight of a fractured nation pressed against his chest, he didn't cave, he committed. Even when the price was isolation, even when the critics were louder than the vision, he chose principle over peace, legacy over ease. That's what real power looks like. Not volume, not bravado, but ruthless standards, the kind that don't bow to feelings. Walt Disney didn't tolerate reality. He stared at swamps and saw castles. He looked at paper sketches and saw empires. And when everyone laughed, he bet everything again and again on belief. Because legacy isn't built by tolerating what is, it's built by obsessing over what could be. And this is where most people lose, not from a lack of talent, not from lack of opportunity. They lose because they tolerate low standards long enough that they become their identity. They keep the job they hate. They stay in relationships that drain them. They avoid confrontation with their own apathy, and they call it patience. They call it timing. They call it realistic. But no, it's toleration dressed up in language that makes you feel safe. But your greatness was never meant to feel safe. It was meant to stretch you, rip you out of neutral, awaken the parts of you that have been silent for far too long. Listen to me. You will never become what you're not willing to demand from yourself daily. You don't stumble into success. You standard your way into it. What you repeat, you become. What you allow, you train. What you normalize, you eventually believe. That's why every tiny standard you raise becomes a brick in your legacy. Waking up on time. Speaking up when you used to stay quiet. Taking the stairs when you used to wait for an elevator. Finishing the workout you wanted to quit. saying no to what once owned you. These aren't just habits, they are declarations. They are edits to the script of who you are becoming. And day by day, those edits stack. Until one day, without applause, without a lightning bolt moment, you wake up and realize you become someone else. Not because the world changed, but because you did. The world honors clarity. And your life will always mirror what you refuse to compromise on. If you tolerate disrespect, don't be surprised when people cross lines. If you tolerate laziness, don't be shocked when excellence avoids you. If you tolerate inconsistency, don't complain when your results reflect chaos. But when you raise your baseline, when you stop asking for more and start demanding more from yourself, the world adjusts. Doors open. People change around you. Not because they changed, but because you did. Standards are contagious. Energy is contagious. Discipline is contagious. And when your soul walks with certainty, your environment has no choice but to shift. So here's the question that matters now. What are you still tolerating that your future self would be ashamed of? Write it down. Name it, confront it, end it, because what you tolerate today is teaching your future how to treat you, and your legacy is listening. Your legacy isn't written at your peak. It's written when no one is clapping, when you're tempted to lower your standards just to feel liked, when you're staring at a decision that looks small but smells like self-betrayal, when your soul whispers, "This isn't it," but your fear replies, "It's good enough." It's written in that very moment in the quiet behind closed doors when no one's watching and you either shrink or rise. Because this is the secret: legacy doesn't begin when you succeed. It begins the moment you refuse to settle. The moment you say, "I don't care if no one sees this rep at the gym. I don't care if no one hears me wake up early to journal, to pray, to plan. I don't care if no one notices the job I turned down, the relationship I walked away from, the shortcut I didn't take. Because I noticed, and my future will thank me for it." You don't need a crowd to create momentum. You need consistency in silence. You don't need hype to build discipline. You need standards no emotion can talk you out of. Because that's the thing about tolerance. It's sneaky. It hides behind logic, disguises itself as patience, masquerades as being realistic. But you know, when you're selling yourself short, you can feel it in your gut. When your energy drops, when your passion dims, when you find yourself explaining away things you used to fight for, that's not life humbling you, that's life testing you. And most people fail this test because it doesn't come with alarms. It comes with comfort. You start tolerating more junk than you used to. You settle for circles that drain your spirit. You call people friends who don't even know what your dreams are. And slowly, silently, you begin adjusting your identity downward to match the environment you were too scared to outgrow. But you weren't born to adjust to dysfunction. You weren't created to survive what insults your calling. You weren't designed to bend your power to keep the peace. You were born to elevate the room, to set the tone, to hold the line, to walk into every space like someone who remembers who they are. And that's what raising your standard really means. It means remembering who you were before you tolerated less, before you made excuses, before you traded growth for approval, before you lost yourself trying to keep what God was trying to remove. Raising your standard is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the part of you that stopped settling. You want a new life, then demand a new normal, and protect it like your legacy depends on it, because it does. High standards are not restrictive. They are liberating. When you raise your standards, you no longer need to chase people because you attract alignment. You no longer beg for respect because your presence demands it. You no longer waste energy on what drains you because your time has become too expensive to waste. Look at every man and woman who left a legacy that outlived them. They all had one thing in common. They refused to tolerate what everyone else was willing to ignore. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't tolerate injustice. He didn't wait for permission. He didn't soften the truth to make it more palatable. He drew the line, and it wasn't popular, and it wasn't safe, but it was necessary. Because legacies are not written in comfort, they are carved in conviction. And every time you raise your standard, you create a ripple effect that outlives your name. Your children feel it, your friends see it, your enemies respect it. Your Creator honors it. Because when you raise your standard, you raise the temperature of your life. You go from lukewarm to undeniable. So here's the call. Audit everything. Audit the habits, the people, the self-talk. Audit the music, the mindset, the morning routine. Audit the words you speak when you're alone. Is it building you, or is it tolerating your stagnation? Don't lie, don't soften, don't sugarcoat, because your legacy is not being built someday. It's being shaped right now, in your yes, in your no, in the boundaries you set, in the energy you protect, in the vision you refuse to water down. Because this isn't about motivation. It's about identity. It's about deciding once and for all, I will not let what's easy define what's eternal. I will not let what's convenient dictate what's possible. I will not tolerate anything beneath who I was created to be, because what I tolerate is writing my legacy, and I've decided it will be written in fire. You want peace? Then stop tolerating what wages war inside your mind. You want clarity? Then stop allowing confusion to keep renting space in your head. You want purpose? Then stop giving time to what has no eternal return. You see, we've been lied to, told to wait, told to be patient, told to ease into change. But what if I told you it's not the delay that's killing you, it's what you're defending while you delay? Because every delay without discipline turns into a decision. You didn't just wait, you decided to stay the same. And here's the harsh truth most people never face. You're not stuck. You're comfortable with what you've allowed. Stuck is an illusion. What you call overwhelmed might just be too many open doors you should have closed months ago. What you call confused might just be clarity you've been avoiding because of what it would cost. So ask yourself, what are you still giving access to that no longer deserves it? And before you answer, remember this: access is power. And every time you tolerate something beneath your calling, you hand over authority to something that cannot carry your future. You give it influence. You give it a vote. And eventually you give it the pen. You say you want to be great, but you keep giving co-writing privileges to things you were supposed to delete. That friend who keeps you small. That comfort habit you swore you'd break. That voice in your head that speaks in fear's accent but wears your face. It's not just holding you back, it's editing your legacy in real time. This is where it gets real. Because there comes a moment where you're no longer being held back by others. You're being held hostage by your standards. And unless you raise them, you will live in a loop of almosts. Almost ready, almost confident, almost successful, almost free, but almost never changes the world. Almost doesn't leave a legacy. Almost is what we tolerate when we don't believe we're worthy of all in. But you are. You've always been. You were born to walk in full conviction, to stare into the chaos and bring order, to break generational patterns and walk differently, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Necessary, not optional. Because there are people tied to your obedience. There are futures waiting on your standards. There are lives you haven't even met yet that are being shaped right now by the lines you choose not to cross anymore. You think this is about you? It's not. It never was. Your discipline is about the next generation. Your self-respect is a signal to your children about what is possible. Your habits don't just define your day, they define the culture of your legacy. So when you say it's not that deep, you're right, it's deeper. Because the decisions you make in secret are building a future that will either bless others or burden them. This is the call to raise the bar. To stop asking, how little can I get away with, and start asking, what would my life look like if I fully honored the gift I've been given? Because every time you say no to a low standard, you say yes to the life you were built for. Every time you refuse to tolerate what no longer serves your growth, you reclaim territory that apathy tried to steal. And every time you step into discipline, you walk away from regret before it ever had the chance to touch you. You don't need more motivation. You need a mirror. Look at your life right now. Not as a victim, not as a bystander, but as the architect. You've tolerated your way into patterns. You can discipline your way into freedom. You've tolerated noise. You can design your way into peace. You've tolerated being reactive. You can move your life into ruthless intentionality. The power is not out there. It's in the next standard you raise, the next decision you refuse to delay, the next voice you stop listening to because it never came from truth. This isn't hype. This is your moment. Because when you raise your standards, you are not just building habits, you are building identity infrastructure. You are becoming the kind of person who no longer tolerates being average. Not out of ego, but out of alignment with your assignment. Because if you tolerate less, you become less. But if you raise the bar and burn the excuse, you become the standard bearer, the one others model, the one others follow, the one others say, if they can shift like that, maybe I can too. And that is a legacy worth writing. Let this truth tattoo itself into your thinking. Your boundaries are not burdens, they are blueprints. Your standards are not cages, they are compasses. Because every time you say no more, you're not closing yourself off. You're calling yourself higher. And that matters because the version of you that builds legacy doesn't operate on emotions. It operates on alignment. It doesn't need permission. It operates on mission. It doesn't wait for perfect timing. It moves with divine timing. That version of you is forged, not found. And you don't stumble into it by accident. You rise into it on purpose. So let's strip away the noise. Who are you when no one's watching? What do you allow when the pressure isn't on? What corners do you cut when there's no audience? What thoughts do you tolerate when you're tired? When you're tested? When you're tempted to numb? That's where your legacy is hiding. In the choice between sleep and self-respect, in the difference between discipline and delay, in the moments when you either rise or repeat, because repeating patterns will give you a life you didn't ask for but secretly agreed to. Patterns of procrastination, patterns of passive approval seeking, patterns of self-doubt dressed up as humility, patterns of underplaying your worth just to stay digestible. And the longer you tolerate them, the more they write your story in ink. Not pencil, not erasable. You think it's just a phase, but it's writing pages. It's writing precedent. And if you're not intentional, your entire life becomes a monument to compromise. This is the moment where you stop. You draw the line. You look your past in the face and say, I see you, I respect you. But you do not have veto power anymore. Because I am no longer tolerating the fake friendships that celebrate my weakness, but shrink at my growth. The goals I pretend are too big just to avoid responsibility. The self-sabotage I've dressed up as rest. The language that keeps me small. The shame cycles I didn't even realize I had memorized. It ends here. Because what you tolerate, you teach. You teach others how to treat you. You teach your subconscious what's acceptable. You teach your destiny what you're willing to fight for. So if you're still wondering why certain things keep repeating, maybe it's not because they're testing you, maybe it's because you keep inviting them. And the invitation is subtle. Every time you say nothing when you should have spoken, every time you stay when you were called to walk away. Every time you lower your crown just to be liked by people who don't even know their own worth. So what do you do now? You raise your floor, you move your baseline, you declare, this is my new normal. Not when I'm motivated, not when I feel like it, not when it's easy, but now, today, in the face of resistance. And no, it won't always feel good. But neither does becoming unrecognizable in your own life. Raise your expectations and watch the room change. Raise your vocabulary and watch your thoughts change. Raise your posture and watch your confidence rise from the ashes of past permission. You are not a product of your potential. You are a reflection of your standards. So stop lowering your light just because someone else forgot how to shine. Stop making excuses for people who wouldn't bleed for your purpose. Stop trying to carry things God already asked you to put down. Your legacy is not waiting at the finish line. It's being built in this breath, this minute, this moment, where you decide no more, Not one more day of delay, not one more excuse, not one more compromise, because the next version of me, the one who changes everything, that version is born when I stop tolerating this one. The scariest truth you'll ever face: you get what you settle for, not what you wish for, not what you cry about, not what you say you deserve. You get what you tolerate consistently. And for some of you, that truth is the wake-up call you've been avoiding. Because the story you're living right now was negotiated line by line in the margins of your standards. And if you don't like how the chapter reads, rewrite it. Raise the price of your time, raise the weight of your words, raise the quality of your thoughts, raise the frequency of your gratitude, raise the courage behind your decisions, and raise the volume of that inner voice, the one that remembers who you were before the world taught you to settle. Because here's the thing, you don't just wake up one day and become someone powerful. You bleed into it. You burn into it. You sacrifice into it. You claw out of every identity you created to survive and walk into the one you were born to thrive in. But it begins with the removal of mediocrity, the removal of excuses that wear fancy words, the removal of people who love the version of you that's easiest to manipulate, because not everyone around you is meant to go with you. Some are spectators, some are saboteurs, some were simply chapters, not conclusions. And the longer you tolerate their weight in your life, the longer you delay your rise. This is your choice point, the place where your old life begs you to turn around, where comfort makes its final pitch, where fear dresses itself up in logic and whispers, "Let's just stay here." It's good enough, isn't it? But you didn't come this far for good enough. You didn't fight your demons, bury your old self, outgrow your own family's mindset, just to plateau at polite ambition. You're here for legacy, not popularity, not permission, legacy, and legacy doesn't come cheap. It cost you fake peace, it cost you ego, it cost you comfort zones, so familiar they feel like family, but the return is generational. Because when you shift your standard, you don't just change your path, you reset what's possible for everyone after you. Your children will see it. Your name will carry it. Your spirit will rest knowing I didn't leave a safe life. I left a standard. So ask yourself one more time, what are you still tolerating? What's still quietly stealing your time, your energy, your worth, dressed as fine, normal, or this is just who I am? If it's not building you, it's breaking you. If it's not stretching you, it's shrinking you. If it's not rooted in truth, it's slowly poisoning your future. So drop it. Drop the story. Drop the defense. Drop the addiction to who you've been. And raise the standard. Because what you tolerate isn't just influencing your future, it's writing it. And if you don't like the pen in its hand, snatch it back. Write a new ending. Bleed it in bold. Sign it with sacrifice. And leave no doubt when the final page turns that you didn't just live. You led. You refused to bend. And you died empty because you lived full. There comes a moment when you realize the fight was never outside of you. Not in your job, not in your past, not in your circumstances. The real war was in the standards you set when no one was watching. Because you don't drift into greatness, you don't stumble into destiny, you forge it in the furnace of self-respect. And every time you raised your voice against compromise, every time you walked away from what dishonored your soul, every time you chose to act like the person you were becoming instead of the one you used to be, you were writing your legacy in fire. The truth is, no one is coming to raise the standard for you. Not your friends, not your boss, not even God. He gave you the blueprint, He gave you the conviction, He gave you the vision, but He will not do for you what He placed within you. And if you keep tolerating what He told you to tear down, you are building someone else's kingdom on top of your calling. So draw the line. In your habits, in your thoughts, in your relationships, in your self-talk, decide once and for all. This soul has a mission. This mind is a fortress. This heart is not for hire. And this life will not be a monument to mediocrity. You are the gatekeeper. You are the author. You are the architect. And every time you choose not to tolerate the low, you make space for the extraordinary. You stop apologizing for your growth. You stop making room for what dishonors your peace. You stop saying someday and start declaring now, because the clock doesn't slow for your hesitation and your future doesn't negotiate with your fear. Legacy is not built in convenience. It's built in the day you stopped caring who misunderstood you and started protecting the standard that would define you. It's built when you realize the world doesn't need another person who blends in. It needs you at full standard, at full integrity, at full fire. So here it is, the final call, the final truth. What you tolerate is shaping your tomorrow. What you ignore is leaking into your identity. What you settle for is becoming your legacy line by line, choice by choice, day by day. So make this the day you draw the line, not in sand, but in stone. Raise the standard, raise the fire, raise the future, and leave behind a legacy so loud that silence could never erase it. If this voice stirred your spine, if something inside you rose as the words landed, don't just watch, don't just nod, respond. Like it, share it. Comment below with the one thing you're no longer willing to tolerate. Declare it. Because sometimes your first step forward is saying out loud what you'll never step back into. Let the world know you're awake. And from this moment on, you don't live by noise or fear or comfort. You live by standard.